Hi y'all. In today's video I thought I would bring you along to show you some of the supplies that I use every single day. Um, I want to show you what I use and alternatives to things that you'll see on people's videos. Um, One of the things that I use on a regular basis is a paper trimmer. Um, this is absolutely not necessary. We will use scissors and a craft knife and ruler, and we'll be tearing paper and stuff. So you don't really have to have a trimmer. They're very nice to have. I can't cut a straight line, so I love my paper trimmer. This one has been a workhorse. It's lasted a really long time. However, during the coronavirus, my blade was dull and I didn't have any replacement blades. I tried to order them everywhere and nobody seemed to have them, so I had to buy a new one. But it wasn't necessary that I do that. And I do want to say up front that I have sold everything that I've made, and so the money that I've made has been extra for me, so I have turned it around and bought supplies with it. So if you don't have money, don't worry about it. Like I said, we're just going to kind of go to the basics. And during this series, I'm only going to use the things that we actually talk about and the alternatives to having some of the fancier equipment. Um, First of all, let's talk about scissors. It doesn't matter what type of scissors that you have. These are really, really old. These are Dollar Tree scissors. These are just some other scissors. I've probably got, 10 more pair of scissors. Now, I do have scissors like this. They have a ribbon tied around them. The only thing that I cut with these is ribbon. And I don't even cut the ribbon that has the wire in it with them. I only cut like regular ribbon. I have my sewing scissors. They're marked. I do have some that, have just paper written on them so that I know, to only cut paper with them. So I do try to take care of my scissors so that they'll last a really long time. I told you yesterday I would show you some ways to sharpen your scissors. If you have some really old scissors or some cheaper scissors that might need sharpening regularly, we talked about saving your foil from like coffee cans, cappuccino cans, creamers, just various things that foil comes on. And you can take your scissors, and at the end of every day that I'm crafting, I spend about 10 minutes cleaning up my supplies and putting them up. You wouldn't know it by looking at my workstation, but I do. I at least get this stuff put back in the things that it goes in, other than my papers and things. But all you need to do to help keep your scissors sharp is just cut just a little bit. You don't even have to cut that many times. Now, if you do have scissors that won't cut hot butter, you may have to do this a few times, and you will see almost an immediate difference at how your scissors cut. And you can do it for your small scissors. You can do it. These are actually pretty sharp. I've sharpened them recently. But if I cut a lot of paper that day, then I'll go ahead at the end of the day and just cut a few strips. Not much, just a strip or two to sharpen them. If I get really bad, and none of them are really bad because I've sharpened them recently, you can take some fine grit sandpaper. And now on here, this line right here shows where I attempted to sharpen my paper trimmer. I had sharpened that blade so many times that it just wasn't going to sharpen anymore. I've never had, well, actually I have. I've had to replace a couple of pairs of scissors because I just had sharpened them down to where you could, see daylight through them. And I probably could have taken a pair of pliers or hammer or something and bent them back down and, made them work a little bit longer. But, for $1, I thought, well, I'll just, replace them. But if you get some really, really fine grit sandpaper, you can take your scissors and just cut a little bit, and it will help sharpen them as well if the foil doesn't work. The sandpaper is pretty abrasive, so I would not use that on a regular basis, just when your scissors get to the point where the foil isn't working anymore. Some of like the little cheap scissors like this, that I used to use in my cross stitch and things like that, they were really cheap, and so they ended up having to be sharpened more and more. This pair right now, they're very hard to maneuver, and there's no screw to kind of loosen up. So I just take a drop of like 3-in-1 oil and put it, on that. When you use that, you want to set your scissors up in some kind of way so that they will drain overnight, so that no oil will be left in there. Otherwise, if you don't get all that oil out, then when you go to use them, you're going to get the little grease look on your papers and ribbons and such. So you can definitely oil them, and it'll help. But be aware, just make sure that you wipe them off really, really good whenever you use them. Now, part of my routine at the end of the day is I get one of my wipes. I showed you, how I save up my wipes yesterday. And I'll just take one of my little wipes and take some alcohol. I just have some regular alcohol, and I put me a little bit of alcohol on my wipe. I open up my scissors and I just wipe them off. Alcohol helps to keep your scissors sharp and in good shape, and I just leave them open. Alcohol evaporates very, very quickly. This helps to get any glue or residues or such off of your scissors. I didn't clean that pair very good last time I used them, but anyway, it will help get all that off. So I do that each day on the scissors that I use throughout the day. And if you have pinking shears like you sew with or whatever, you can use those. Again, if I use those during the day, and these have gotten a little bit tight too, so I kind of need to oil them. And so I actually have a cheap pair of pinking shears that I use more than these. These kind of have a really big tooth on them, so I don't use these as much as I do the cheap ones. And I have a whole container of cheap scissors. My mother used to decorate with a lot of ribbons and things like that, and so she bought this huge set. I think it was about 20 different pair that were in some kind of container, and I think she got them for about $10 or something. So they're really, really cheap, but they work. And when they start getting dull, I sharpen those the same way. I think taking care of your supplies is just paramount to making them work. Your hole punchers, with these, you can also sharpen these by clipping some foil. I just put it up, but you can use foil to sharpen them, or you can again use fine grit sandpaper, or extra fine even, and do that, and it will help to sharpen those and keep those in good shape as well. Old tweezers, if you have any old tweezers hanging around, you'll use these if you do any beadwork, any tiny little stuff that you need to pick up that you can't seem to get with your hands. Your tweezers can be invaluable for that. Let's see. This is just like a little tiny hole puncher. I don't even think you can see that on here. It's just so tiny. I rarely use them. You will find that there are very, very few things that you're actually going to use on a daily basis. I don't even know if y'all can see that little tiny hole right there. I mean, it punches a tiny hole. I've probably used these 5 times. I just don't use them. So when you go to buy something, consider how much you will actually use it. Try not to make, just stupid purchases. Nail files. This came from the Dollar Tree, and I use it on paper. If I've cut a piece of paper and it doesn't come out, or torn a piece of paper and maybe it doesn't come out exactly right, I can file that down. And of course, this is not attached to anything, but if it was on card, it would smooth that out so that I wouldn't have a rough edge. I use this all the time. So if you have any old emery boards, they will work. The really coarse side sometimes will chew it up a little bit more than the soft side. These seem to have coarse sides on both sides. Actually, this one's not as bad as that. But I use emery boards and these all the time. you'll see people talk about bone folders. And this is kind of what a bone folder looks like. If you get a scoring board, usually they come with a bone folder. These are kind of a type of bone folder. You can see that I use mine for other things other than folding paper. But you use these, say if you glue this piece of paper down and you want to crease it really good, you can use that bone folder to get a really, really, really nice crease. And so it's a nice sharp edge, and it helps to keep the paper in whatever direction. When we get to it, I'm going to show you when you fold a piece of paper which way to actually crease it, because it's about mountains and valleys and stretching those paper fibers. Bone folders are absolutely not necessary. I use the edge of my scissors, well not these, but I'll use the edge of my scissors to accomplish the same thing. Your hands work great if you can just really press that down. When I was in culinary school, particularly in pastry school, the instructor said, God gave us the best tools in the world, our hands, and that is absolutely true. So yesterday we talked about rulers. I think I used a metal one yesterday. This is just a cheap wooden one that I think I got at Walmart for about 97 cents. And like I said, I use these. I measure out my pieces. I lay it down, and then I just tear my paper. And this one didn't work as well, but you can get a nice sharp edge, or you can get a raggedy edge. And a lot of times I use torn pieces more than I use cut pieces, and that makes a beautiful embellishment. So don't ever throw your scraps away. Don't think, oh well, that's just a piece of trash, I'm never going to use it. When we collage, we will use all those pieces. So save any of those. Staplers. I don't use mine very often. A lot of people in the journaling world do. Instead of using glue or instead of sewing, they use staples. Sometimes I like the look of staples. Other times I don't. If you want colored staples and you have some markers, like some Sharpie markers, you can color your staples. Say if you want blue staples, you can take that Sharpie marker and color the tops blue or red or green or whatever color you want your staples to be. So I thought that was a really cool idea, and sometimes I do that. And then I will, when I do color them, I have a container that I put my little staples in for my colored staples, and so I have different color ones, but I use a whole strip, and that way you don't have little portions, so when you're working on a project, you'll end up with the color staples that you don't want. I have various kind of staplers. This one is, which you'll see a lot of crafters use. It's absolutely not necessary. I actually got this one as a result of my friend passing away, and I inherited all of her supplies. I didn't buy this. I don't really use it that much. Most of the time I'll use the smaller one, or I have like a standard desk stapler that I'll use, because most of the time when I do use staples, I'm sitting in my chair in the living room where it's a little more comfortable for me, and I'll use that, and so I just have that little desk stapler with me, and I'll staple my pieces. So that is something that, a stapler is nice to have, and you can pick up one of those little tiny ones at the Dollar Tree if you, don't have a stapler and want one. Let's see, I have a little bottle of water here, but, we're not going to deal with that right now. I talked to you yesterday about saving any little cards that you get, rewards cards, store cards, old credit cards. Now, if you do use an old credit card and you're going to do any kind of videos, make sure you scratch your name and your account number off of them. This one is one that somebody sent to my mother. She's deceased now, but I left her name on it. She's not alive anymore, so it's not like it can harm her in any way. But you'll use these to spread out your glue, again, to crease your papers. I use these cards all the time. I have a huge pile of them. And I don't clean them like I should. I don't know why I don't just throw them in my soapy water bucket at the end of the day and then wipe them off the next morning, but for some reason I don't. so I end up having to clean them. If you have a comb that you don't use, and I bought a whole pack of these, a whole pack of combs at the Dollar Tree, and I don't know, there were 5, 10 combs in there. And what I use these for is making bows. And you can make little tiny bows, you can make bigger bows, you can make great big bows. So whenever I do some bow making, the comb is handy because I have a hard time with little fiddly things. So those are like the main tools that I have that I use regularly. So I'm going to just move these out the way for a minute. And I'm going to grab just a couple of things here. I use these little foam brushes to lay down glue or paints or gesso. They clean up really, really easy. You get a pack of 4 or 6, something like that. You can get them at the dollar store, and they work great. And once they wear out or they come apart, I just use some hot glue, put them back together again. And mine have lasted a long time. I probably had the same pack for 6 months or so. They've lasted a really long time. Just wash them out real good after each use. This is just a household paintbrush. And I told you yesterday you kind of need a wider brush, like for putting glue. So if I'm gluing a whole page down, it's a whole lot easier to spread with a great big brush than it is, a tiny brush or even one that big. That just lays down a whole lot. I'm going to show you later how to make some flowers out of various types of ribbon. And you'll use a lighter to burnish the edges so that they don't ruffle. This one actually doesn't ruffle, but it just has to be a piece. And you just run it across like that. It burnishes the ribbons so that they don't fray. So, if you have a little lighter hanging around or, know somebody that smokes that'll give you one, get a lighter from them. Sometimes you'll have dark papers and you'll want to use a white pen and to, maybe write something with. And this one I don't have primed, but once I prime this pen, there it comes. Then you can actually write with this. I still don't have it primed good enough. You can write with this, and you can even get a little bit finer letters if you work with it a little bit. But anyway, if you want a white pen, they are very, very expensive to buy. So I found that this correction pen that I got at the Dollar Tree works really, really good. $1 compared to $4 or $5 for one. I'm loving that. So let me put my alcohol away. We talked about glues yesterday. I did find my big bottle of glue that I get at the dollar store. I use it a lot for collaging. I just water it down a little bit. We'll go into that more when we get to that point. But you can pick that up for $1. It works really, really good. Not so great on fabrics, but it does work really well on paper. I've had no problems with it at all. Needle and thread. There's times that you're going to want to make ruffles and sew on buttons, just for the looks and effects. You absolutely don't have to have it for buttons. You can, glue those on. But there's times that, I do use a needle and thread. You will need a needle and thread when you go to make your journal. You put your journals together to sew your signatures into the covers. So you will need needle and thread. I recommend for that to use like an embroidery floss where you can use 3 strands at a time to make it really durable and thick. If it's a really firm cover, you may want to use a few more strands, and there's 6 strands on a piece of embroidery floss. So you can use 1 strand, 2 strands, all the way up to 6 strands. We talked about a brayer yesterday. I told you I had one, but I never use it. And this would be like to smooth out your glue, behind pieces, to, crease these. I never, ever use it. So this, I actually didn't buy this separately. It came with some tacky glue, I think, that I bought one time. And I never, ever use it. there'll be some flower making that we do that I told you about the lighter for. And I just use my candles. I light them, and I'll run the little. I use my tweezers, hold it over the flame. It'll curl up the flowers real well. That's going to be a whole process that I show you. So any kind of little candles that you can use would be wonderful. We talked about the circle hole punch yesterday. As I said, I use it to for envelopes to make like little thumb holes so you can reach in and get things out better. When I have scrap pieces of paper, I cut out, like this little scrap, and you can cut out bunches of circles with it to use in decorating. I use circles all the time when I'm making flowers, but I usually either will glue 2 or 3, 4 layers together like that, and I'll put them behind the flowers that I'm making to give it a good strong base. I'll show you how I decorate these with some buttons. So there are lots of ways that I use this 1-inch circle punch. So if you are going to buy, if you don't have any punches, the very first one I would recommend is a 1-inch. Maybe some people would disagree with me. This is a, oh my goodness, my mind just went blank. When we ink, we want to, give it a distressed look, and we kind of daub this in. My other one just wore out, and we just kind of gently, and that gives it a more aged look on the edges. And so we use these for distressing. However, more than this, I used the little makeup sponges like I showed you yesterday, and they work the same way, and they're a whole lot cheaper than buying those daubers and replacement pads, because these pads actually come off. And you just, well, now see, this one's already coming apart. The staple is coming out of this Velcro piece. But these actually come apart, and you just change the pads on them. So I do use the makeup sponges more than that, and I just dab them in there. And, well, I should have wiped that off a little bit first before I did that. Let's try this on this side. Kind of give it the... So it gives it more of an aged look. So if you're looking for the vintage distressed look, again, I will show you how to make ink so that you're not having to buy those expensive inks. I have a makeup brush somewhere that I use for distressing as well. And I don't see it right in front of me, but well, I didn't plan this very well, did I? I thought it was right here. Anyway, you can use a makeup little brush. They're kind of oval. Anyway, I'll show it to you another time. If you have any corks, I'm not a wine drinker. I'm not a drinker at all, actually, but if you know somebody that is a wine drinker, ask them for their corks. And these make great little stamps to decorate your backgrounds and such. Isn't that cute? And now this is a permanent ink, so I'm not really going to do it, but you can actually roll this on the ink pad and then roll it across. But if I do that right now, my hands are going to end up with the black, and then I have a hard time getting it off. Now this, I can't teach you how to make because I don't know how. But you're going to want, if you're going to do any stamping, you're going to want to buy a permanent ink, an archival ink. This stays on is great. You'll see that a lot of people use it. Again, use a coupon. Don't pay full price for this ink. Corner rounder I showed you yesterday. Not necessary. You can accomplish the same thing that you can with scissors. You just kind of round your corners a little bit. It makes it really nice. So you don't even need that. They are very nice to have. I use mine all the time. That is one thing I do not regret buying. If you're interested in buying stamps and you have limited money like I do, I'm going to recommend, and I'll show you more stamps later when we get into stamping. I was very blessed when my friend passed away that she had an entire container full of stamps. I'm going to be honest with you. I almost never use those stamps. I forget I have them. Don't really use most of them. Some of them I've never used. And I should. I should use them to do more making my own background pages. But if you're going to get a stamp or two, I would recommend getting a script stamp. They make beautiful edges and stuff. I don't care for these blocks. Some people like the wooden blocks. I don't care for them. I like the acrylic stamps better. But a script stamp, you can go along your sides of your paper, and you know, not even in darkly, but just to take up some space on your paper, so that when you lay your embellishments down, you have something in the background. So a script stamp would be one that I would recommend as one of your first stamps that you get. The other one would be like a background kind of stamp, like a scrolly kind of stamp. Again, to lay backgrounds down, to put behind the pieces that you attach. This piece is not going to match at all, but see how nice that looks behind there? It just keeps it from being kind of plain. So, a scripty stamp, a scroll stamp, that kind of thing. Those are the stamps that I use over and over again. The other stamps, they're in the drawer. I forget I have them. Unless I am just reading down my list of things to use, they end up getting neglected. And I'm terrible about taking care of my stamps. So I am not the one to ask about how to take care of your stamps. I'm not, you know, there's stamp cleaners. There, you know, you can use soap and water, you know, for the ones that aren't permanent inks. You know, I'm just not, I just don't take care of my stamps like I should. Like I said, I don't use them much, and when I do, I end up sticking them back on the acetate that they come on, and placing them back in the container or the notebook that I have for them, and not clean them. So I'm really bad about taking care of my stamps. Yesterday we talked about the binder clips. Again, when you go to put your journals together and sew them into your signature, and what a signature is the pages of a book. If you look at a book, and I should have had one with me, they are glued in or sewed in sections. So you'll have a whole section, and that's called a signature. And sometimes you'll only have one signature, sometimes you'll have two or three, but you'll always sew them in one signature at a time. But when you put your papers in your journal cover, you're going to want to bind those down good and tight so that when you sew them in, they don't wiggle around. Again, I would recommend no less than 2. 4 would be better. Some call them binder clips, some call them bulldog clips. I don't care what you call them. These are going to be very invaluable. You can use paper clips, but I found that they slide more than the binder clips do. I've never had a problem with the binder clip sliding, so I do use those. Those are the main things, other than like the glue that I talked about yesterday. I did want to show you a couple of other ones. I did talk about glue sticks. I'm not a fan of glue sticks, but you know, if you are, that's great. A lot of people really are. Mod Podge, you can get this. This bottle actually, I think, came from the Dollar Tree. I don't even buy Mod Podge anymore. I just make my own out of the school glue. This is actually a PVA glue. Any of these like school glues, white glues like this are called a PVA glue. The biggest difference between the tacky glue that I found and the school glue is this is a little bit thicker and a little bit stronger, but not enough for me to pay the difference in the money for it. This is a specialty glue. I did not buy this. This came from my friend's stash. I don't even know if it's any good anymore. It looks like it's separating. But this, if you're going to do some jewelry making or use it for mirrors, leather or patent leather anyway, glass, metals, you would use like a specialty glue to hold those down. I've never used it, but I do have it. If you have any of these little bottles, and you can see that this glue is kind of set up in there, I actually put some of the the 3-in-1 glue that I use like for fabrics in here. And the fabric glue that I showed you is not water-based. It's acetone